Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome. Today we're going to be doing some basic maintenance on the LS400. For my oil change, I'm going with Mobil 1 Full Synthetic 5W30. Alright, so I just realized I don't have an engine oil filter. I ordered an OEM filter from Amazon and it's not here yet. So I'm going to AutoZone to get a filter. For my engine oil, I'm going to be using Mobil 1 Full Synthetic 5W30. I would suggest going with full synthetic. Synthetic is just manufactured to be oil rather than conventional, and it is more effective towards the end of its life cycle, but generally speaking, it is a little better. It's not too much more expensive, and just do it. So, additionally, I don't think the brand matters very much. Pretty much any high-quality oil brand is going to be fine. Alright, so let's talk snake oil, additives, and all that real quick. Oil is about 80% base oil and about 20% additives. So the additives that are in it are a huge portion of the oil itself. They vary a lot on the type of oil you're getting. So for example, if you get a high mileage oil, it's going to have additives that serve the needs of an older engine. In my opinion, that's not always a good thing. There are certain additives that are meant to swell seals, and some people theorize that when that type of additive touches your ancient seals, or if you use it on a newer engine that's in decent shape, it swells those seals, then it causes the seals to get cut, etc. So there are a lot of theories that certain types of oil may actually cause a leak, or cause other issues, that kind of thing. I have noticed that when I use particular oils, there was a certain Valvoline oil that I used, and it's nothing against Valvoline. I think it was more the type of oil that I was using. You know, I don't know. It did seem like it was more leaky. All my leaks just became way more excessive after I used that oil. Take that with a grain of salt. Regardless, I think just a regular full synthetic is good. Alright, so aside from the additives, we also have the oil weight. I never really recommend straying from the manufacturer's recommended oil weight. I mean, that's how the engine was designed. That is what the engineers are telling you that you should run. It was common practice in like the Miata community to run Rotella T6, which is a higher weight oil than what the manufacturer recommended. The manufacturer liked the 530, just like these cars do. A lot of 90s Japanese vehicles run 5W30. When I ran 5W30 on the Miata, my lifter tick went away, everything sounded and ran better than with the Rotella. And you know, it's just use the right oil. That's it. It's that simple. People get all crazy with it. They come up with these theories. Oh, you know, the worn out engines, you can use thicker weight, all that stuff. Maybe. Alright, just so you know, these numbers, this first number essentially is the rating when it is cold, the second is when it's at operating temperature. I would also like to throw in that Toyota specifically is manufacturing cars, and a lot of manufacturers are making cars literally based around the oil weight. Some new Camrys, the weight is as low as 0W16. So, we're going to use that, and then I also have this filter. I ordered some OEM filters off Amazon, and they aren't here yet, and I started to do all of this before I really realized this. So I just ran to AutoZone, got this real quick. It should be fine, and when the new filters come in, I'll just swap it out. Shouldn't be a big deal. It may actually be good, because I'm going to be using some additives that sort of de-sludge the engine. Some of that might end up in the filter, so maybe it's not an awful idea. I highly, highly recommend going with OEM oil filters. There's absolutely no reason not to. They're pretty much the same price as any other filters. This one just set me back like, I mean, probably like almost $10, and that's what you can pay on Amazon. Link in the description below, of course. But you can get OEM filters off Amazon. It's very cheap. They usually come with a drain plug gasket, and a lot of those Toyota filters actually come pre-lubed around the O-ring, which is just kind of a nice little thing. Either way, that's probably going to be the best quality filter you can get, and it's not that expensive. Go OEM. Next up on the snake oil list, we're going to be talking about some additional additives. This is something called EPR by BG. I will throw out, BG products are not cheap. Generally speaking, they are of the highest quality that you can really get as far as additives go. It comes at a price. They come in these fancy cans, which are kind of cool. You can use them parts and stuff in. They come with little coins for their reward system if you waste enough of your money. But this is called EPR. So this is engine performance restoration. Essentially what you do is you put this in the engine and briefly run it with the oil, and in theory it goes through and knocks a bunch of sludge and all that kind of stuff loose and sort of helps cleanse the engine. Every time I use this and I do an oil change, the oil comes out very, very, very dark. Generally speaking, I think it works pretty good. It definitely flushes something out. I don't know if it completely cleans your engine, necessarily, but it absolutely cleans some junk out, no doubt. I'm going to run that beforehand. It's going to warm the engine up a little bit, which is going to suck to work with, but... Next, we have BG's MOA, alright? So BG's MOA is simply their oil additive. I believe it works a lot like Lucas Oil Stabilizer. Keep in mind, this does have some volume, so, you know, when you're filling up, don't completely fill it up the first time if you're going to be adding this. Next, we have the 44K. This, I believe, is really good stuff. This would be the fuel additive, so put this in, cleans your fuel system, fairly straightforward, probably the tank a little bit, lines, fuel injectors most importantly. And oil prices are crazy right now and these products are expensive. This is about to be a $120 oil change. I kid you not. For now, I'm going to run the EPR and let it run for about 5 minutes as described. It doesn't want you to drive the car under load. Just put it in there, run it for like 5 minutes, and then you drain it out. Get every last drop because it's expensive. While I run the EPR, I think this is a great time to put the 44K in. This is the fuel system. And just directly into the tank without spilling. Oh, this stuff smells so bad. Literally smells like fish. Fish if it were oil. And I don't mean fish oil. So the back of the EPR says add 11 ounces per 4 to 6 quarts of engine oil. Start the engine, bring it to full operating temperature, and run for a minimum of 10 minutes at 1200 RPM. Fantastic. So we're going to do just that. All right. You're going to want a drain pan. Finally, some high quality jack stands and a floor jack. Jack stands are absolutely necessary when you lift up a vehicle and you're working on it at all. Do not go under it without jack stands. Only supported by the jack. I'm going to use 2 spots to lift up the vehicle. The front subframe and the rear differential. They're both right in the middle. When you're lifting it all the way up off the ground, it's a great way to do it because it doesn't get in the way of the jack stands on the side on the pinch welds. When you're doing the front subframe, be careful, especially if you are low. Watch that oil pan. Especially when you're bringing the car down, don't do it too fast. We can double check by trying to push it off its jack stands. And as you can see, ain't going nowhere. Underneath the car, right here on this big black pan, there is our drain bolt. Just go ahead and position your drain bucket underneath. Hopefully it has a higher capacity than 5.5 quarts. And with that nice leverage, we just break it loose, just like that. Using just one finger, I like to just spin that boy off if you can. Not a drop. I mean, a little smudge, but no oil. And you can smell that EPR. And yeah, so we're just gonna let that drain. Find our drain plug here. Pro tip, always check your drain plug bolt for the washer. If you do not see it come off, make sure that you don't do double washers or double drain plug gaskets, whatever you prefer to call it. But always check the drain plug, install a new one if you need it. I've found that generally the Toyota ones can be reused like 1 or 2 times until they're really crushed. I'm completely fine with reusing this. Again, if you get an OE filter on Amazon, I think they usually do come with a new drain plug gasket. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug her up then. So just go ahead and do this. Now, the torque for the drain plug is about 27 foot-pounds roughly. Most people aren't going to torque that. So, if you have a decent size ratchet like this, then just get it tight and just get it snug. Just to the point where you feel like you're putting some resistance. You got to be a little careful because those gaskets do crush a little bit. So it is possible you could get a sensation of not quite having it tight enough, even though it's just squishing that gasket. On the side opposite of the drain plug, you have the oil filter. Now, there's several ways to get oil filters off. I'm going to show you the one that requires the least amount of tools, but the most amount of effort. So basically, my at-home method for when someone doesn't have any kind of oil filter tools, get a piece of sandpaper. It will give you grip, and just kind of wrap it around the oil filter, and then just try and position your hand so you have as much leverage as possible, and just try and twist it. It can be very difficult. If this doesn't work, we'll find a way. So that is not working. I got a big set of pliers. I'm gonna try that. This is really not a good way to do this, but it is a way to do this. Okay, when the filter is off, it's always good to double check that O-ring. You want to make sure that the O-ring is on the filter. If it's not, you need to check on the mounting surface to make sure that you don't double gasket it again. Always double check that, make sure you're putting it on a clean mating surface, just in case. And we completely mangled this thing. Get the proper tools, we'll talk about it soon. I did not have the proper tools and it was a disaster. Alright, so there's several options when it comes to other oil filter tools. One of my personal favorites for the canister style oil filters is one of these guys. I just call it the Claw, and it's just a 3/8 drive, and when you go counterclockwise, it tightens and wraps around the oil filter and is able to pull it right off. This does tend to damage the oil filter, and you can't really use it again, but it usually doesn't matter if you're replacing it. Alright, so this type of oil filter tool is used for the type of oil filter that is a removable plastic insert that has like a paper cartridge filter that gets replaced. So this is to remove the oil filter like housing cap. They do make some of these that have the right pattern for the canister style filters, but I would rather go with something like this personally. But that kind of tool does exist. And often OE tools like this are going to be necessary depending on what car you're working on. And then we have ye old strap wrench. It just tightens when you pull it in one direction, wraps around the filter itself. Ultimately, the oil filter should not be incredibly tight. If a tool like this can't get it off, you're going to have to resort to extreme measures. Unfortunately, that does happen on occasion, but generally speaking, some general tools like this work pretty well. And there's different variations on these kinds of things. I tend to like the Claw the most. That is what I used when removing almost every canister style filter when I was a mechanic. And then these of course are necessary when you have to remove the plastic housing. OEM filters come pre-lubed on this O-ring. Just get a little bit of engine oil and run it along there. So this is what you need to be looking for. Just make sure there's not an O-ring on there and that's a clean surface. So I'm just gonna go ahead and thread the oil filter on and do it hand tight. A little oil, put it on the O-ring. Alright, just tight enough so that pressurized oil doesn't come out. I'm just gonna make sure everything underneath the car is out, and then I'm simply gonna jack it up in the same points I jacked it up in the first place, or lifted the vehicle. Take the jack ends out, get it on the floor. First thing I'm doing, getting oil in it. The LS400 takes 5.5 quarts. Don't forget, if you're doing MOA or any kind of additive, leave a little room for that. A little tip, if you're using a funnel, sometimes there is just stuff in the way of the opening of the funnel. So on a lot of vehicles, there's like a little sweet spot, and you kind of want to make sure you're there. That way your oil drains out of the funnel quickly, so you don't have to spend your entire night waiting for oil to go down the funnel. A lot of these bottles you can reuse for waste oil. Alright, so now that I have 3 quarts in, about halfway, I'm going to go ahead and do my engine oil supplement. I think it's a good time to do it about in the middle of filling. That way it's already a little mixed in. Another great tip is if you're pouring a jug like this, if you hold it sideways like this, it will prevent that chugging that makes the liquid very turbulent. Pour it from like sideways, kind of like that, and it'll help pour smoothly. It's a pretty nice little tip. Definitely helps a lot. I'm kind of making a mess because I'm just going to take it to the car wash and spray it all off. I'm not even going to bother trying to clean it here. Vehicle's now on the ground. It has just about the appropriate fluid. I'm going to start the engine real quick, double check that engine oil. So checking oil is very simple. Get yourself a rag. You just dip the dipstick in, pull it out, and observe. Make sure you check both sides of the dipstick. One can be more telling than the other, right? Looks like we're maybe about half a quart down. Usually the low and full line represent roughly a quart in most engines. When you pull the dipstick out right away, just immediately wipe that off and put it back in. Because what can happen is oil will splash around up the dipstick and can give you a false reading. So just always start with a fresh reading when it's, you know, not running and still. So I am going to add a little more, not too much. That should be plenty. Of course, we now have our OEM oil filter in our nice candy cane packaging, so we know it's legit Toyota product. So 90915-YZZD3, or as Toyota technicians call it, a D3 filter. You can see how that O-ring is wet. It's actually greasy. Kind of the nice thing about OE Toyota filters is come pre-lubed, so that's pretty handy. Appreciate that. Thanks, Toyota. Let's get this cheap little oil filter off. Hopefully I can do it by hand this time. Toyota OEM Beauty in her final resting place. We want to start it so it gets oil in the oil filter. Same thing with a regular oil change. after you drain it all out and change the filter, always a good idea to start it. It's pretty much the whole reason you're starting it. Just spread the oil through the engine. That way what you read on the dipstick should be about right. Wipe it. Again, come back out. Put just a splash in, and we should be okay. Just use a funnel, goddammit. We can talk about oil spillage since it happens. It's very likely that when you're working on a car and doing an oil change that you will spill oil. Sometimes when you spill it into little nooks and crannies, it can be very hard to get out. It's a pretty good idea. If it's in a hot enough place, it will just start burning, and then your car will smell like burning oil all the time. It's not really something you want. So, in situations like that, you can use something long and skinny, like a screwdriver, whatever, to just carefully poke the paper towel into deep crevices and get maybe pliers or even one of those little grabbers. Just push it down in there, soak it up, and you know, it's really all the best you can do sometimes. Just be really careful with where you're poking, what you're prying on, all that. Okie dokie, let's see where the oil's at. Wonderful. Now that we got all that done, everything is all good. So, hopefully you learned something with this. We went over an oil change. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Leave a like and comment if you have any questions or anything to say. And I'll see you later. Don't forget to check out all the other videos on my channel. I make videos on a ton of stuff, and we also have a lot of LS400 content. So, I'll see you later.